Hey, I'm Sarah. This is Thrills and Kills Booktube, where we talk about everything horror, thriller, and true crime. Today is my long overdue February wrap-up video. So personally, February was a really crappy month for me. Like many people out there, seasonal depression took a hold of me and wouldn't let go. I had a lot of stuff going on in my personal life, some major changes that I will bounce back from, but really rocked me for a little bit. And I just was not in the mood to read anything new, to finish up anything I had been reading, certainly to sit down in front of a camera and film, but I am on the upswing. I'm feeling better, more motivated to get back to this. So here we are today. Let's get into it. To sum up the month of February, I will say it was a decent month of reading, but not an exciting month of reading. You'll see what I mean as we get into it. I've been trying to follow more of a template as I do these because I have a tendency to ramble. If you've been here for a little bit, you might have noticed that by now. So I'm going to start by kind of recapping what my plan was going into the month, and then we'll talk about what actually happened. So overall in February, I think I was planning to read 8 different books. Yeah, 8 books. And I mostly was going to focus on a themed reading vlog that I was calling Bleak and Disturbing Books. And for that, I was planning to read 3 books: Reprieve, A Short Stay in Hell, and Experimental Film. There were 2 book club picks I wanted to focus on. I'm part of the Morbidly Curious book club and then the True Crime book club. I kind of check in, and if I'm interested in the book that month, I'll participate. We'll talk about whether I did or not. And then I had 3 books coming in from the library I was interested in: The Changeling, The Good House, The Overnight Guest. So that was 8. And then I kind of had some stuff on the back burner, like new releases coming in the Night Room subscription, that if I got to them, great. But those were really my set plans. Now, keep in mind, February is the shortest month of the year. So 8 books was already pretty attainable for me, but a little bit of a stretch. I would need to prioritize reading over scrolling TikTok or what have you. That was what my plan was. What actually happened? Well, in the end, I read 7 books in February. I did not participate in either one of those book clubs. Let me back up. For the Morbidly Curious book club, the book that they read in February, Dead Mountain, I did read that in January. I just didn't participate. By the time the discussion night came around, because it's a live discussion on Zoom, I was not feeling it. I was feeling pretty antisocial that night. And then for the True Crime book club, they were planning to read We Keep the Dead Close, which is about a case that took place, I think, in the 60s up at Harvard University. I just straight up didn't do it. I had the book both on Kindle and audiobook through Libby, and I just was like, I can't. I got too many other things going on, and I just wasn't in the mood for it. I feel like personally I have to be in a very specific mood for true crime. And pause. I was in a mood for true crime in February, but I wasn't reading it. I, probably like many of you out there, was obsessed with the Alec Murdaugh case that took place in South Carolina. I like to watch live streams of Emily D. Baker. She is a former prosecutor. She's a lawyer on YouTube here, and she does live stream, live commentary, kind of like a sportscaster, but of these cases that get broadcasted. And so I was glued. I would be working on an Excel file at work, and my iPad would be here glued. So I was in the mood for true crime, just not to read that book. All right, let's talk about the 7 that I actually did read. First up, I read a book called Devil's Creek, and then I moved into my 3-book themed reading vlog, which was A Short Stay in Hell, Reprieve, and Experimental Film. Then I went and picked up my library hold, the Good House. I actually got to get that back to them soon. And then I read a really quick book through Kindle Unlimited, Below by Laurel Hightower. And then I finished up the month with reading another book that came through my library called The Changeling by Victor Laval. I like to kind of keep track of where am I getting these books from, how many physical, etc. So if you're interested, in the month of February, 2 of these books I got through Kindle Unlimited, which was Below and Devil's Creek. 2 came from the library, which was The Good House and The Changeling. And then the other 3, A Short Stay in Hell, Reprieve, and Experimental Film, were on my shelves, my backlist, so to say. I had already owned those, and so just trying to make more of an effort to move through books I already own, before I buy new ones. It's happening a little bit. We'll leave it at that. So 4 of these books were physical books. 3 were ebooks. The ebooks were The Changeling, Below, and Devil's Creek. And one of these books, I checked off a Books in the Freezer reading prompt challenge because I'm trying to participate in their 2023 reading challenge. And that was Reprieve. And the prompt was to read a book by an AAPI author. So Asian American Pacific Islander. The author, I believe he's South Korean. Okay, so that's what I actually read. We'll get into my thoughts about them here shortly. I also finished up February with 2 books in progress, so I will add those onto my March wrap up. Those were Grady Hendrix's new release, How to Sell a Haunted House. By the time February ended, I was maybe like 100 pages in. And then Cormac McCarthy's Child of God. I think I was about 50% of the way through. I'm listening to that one by the time February ended. That's a short book. This is my first Cormac McCarthy I've ever read. If you've read him, you know that it's like an acquired taste, I guess is the way to put it. That one, I'm enjoying it. I just have to be in a very specific state of mind to read that. And I already feel that way as it is with audiobooks, but specific to that book even more so. And I just haven't quite been in the state of mind for it. I also like to keep track of my book buying habits and sort of like check in every month when I do these wrap up videos. So in February, there was 2 ways that I bought books. I had a monthly subscription to Nightworms, and that came with 2 books in it, and that was about $50 after shipping. And then I went to Books A Million. I did a little snippet in a video last month, and I bought 3 books there. So that was 5 new books. However, I read 3 backlist books I had, so really I'm at like a net of 2. So if you think about buying 2 books in a month, that is not bad. All right, now let's get on to the books themselves and what I thought. I start with the books I liked the least and move my way up to the books I liked the most, and you will see why I said this was a decent but not exciting month. So let's start with the 3 stars. I also kind of struggled this month because the books are so different, and that like 2 different books, I gave them a 3-star each. I feel very different about them though, so it's hard to say, yeah, they're the same rating. I will start with experimental film. I went into great detail in my reading vlog, so I won't cover it so much here, but there are parts of this book I really loved, parts that I really couldn't stand, and then it ended again on a part that I enjoyed. So in the end, this was 3 stars. You can see all my little tabby tabs, or maybe you can't, it's hard with the ring light. This follows a woman who is a film editor, but she hasn't really had much happen with her career. She's a mom. She's got very complicated feelings about what it's like to be a mom and a mom of a disabled child, and just a lot of things are not going right for her. She stumbles across some found footage and she thinks, oh great, I can make this documentary and like make a name for myself. Weird things start happening through the footage, and as she's researching the history of this woman who was maybe the first female filmmaker in Canada, it's a very complicated story. But again, parts that I liked, it started off really strong, but then it kind of got really depressing. And I know that's what I was looking for in this themed vlog, but it was like depressing for no reason. Like she's just slogging on and going on about like how woe is me, and it was like Eeyore to a point, but there wasn't any cute donkey to like balance it out. And there's just those points where I was like, come the fuck on, Lois, like just get it together. And she went into so much detail. So the book takes place in Toronto, and she would go into so much detail about this cross street and that cross street, and I'm going downtown to meet so-and-so, and they used to date so-and-so who used to work with this person's mom, and I knew them for it's just so much extra detail that like it lost me. I almost DNF'd this so many times that I finally just had to push myself through because I wanted to give my full thoughts for the reading vlog. And then it ended decent enough, so we'll give it 3 stars. The next 3-star I gave is The Changeling by Victor Laval. So this, I had heard about it for a while, wanted to get to it for a while, and my hold came in on Libby. This one I really struggled to kind of land where I wanted it to be. So in the end, I think 3 is fair because it's like an average decent read, right? There were parts of this book, again, that I really enjoyed, parts that totally lost me. I felt like I was reading 3 different stories that somehow came together to make one novel. And it's like if I were to break it out into parts, like one part would have been like, I want a DNF. Another part was almost a 5-star. So this is how I land on 3. Anyways, we're following this young family. This man named Apollo has just had a son. He's named the son after his dad. His dad disappeared when he was a child, and he was raised by a single mom. There start being questions of like postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis maybe happening with his wife. And then the wife does something terrible, and now his wife and child are no longer with him. And he is trying to figure out what happened. Are they still around? Where are they if they are around? And that's all I really want to tell you. If you know like the folklore of changelings, then like you would understand where this is going. And again, there was parts I really, really liked. And then all of a sudden we're on an island in the middle of the East River in New York City. All of a sudden we're on an island, and there's like questionable, is it trolls or witches? But then they disappear, and now we're on to another set of fairy tale figures. And then all of a sudden we're in a forest in Queens, and now there really is a troll, like a real troll, not just like an allegory of a troll. And now all of a sudden there's like Nordic heritage stuff at play, and people who've got weird pseudonyms, and they're making fake Facebook groups. Like, it was just so many things in one, and I was like, what? Like the whole, if you've read the book, the plot line where he goes to the island and he meets with the witches and like the woman Cal, I feel like that could have been fleshed out more, and that could have been the entire book. So then it was very odd when all of a sudden we're in Queens and we're meeting with like the Nordic Viking type people, right? And that's a whole other story. I just was so confused. But then there's parts I really, really liked, and it really had me. Especially at the beginning when he is a new dad, and he's kind of like poking fun at the fact that he has become one of those parents and like taking 50 photos of their kid doing absolutely nothing and uploading all of them to Facebook and being like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. But really, you know that no one else cares as much as you. Like, I thought some of that was really funny dialogue, and I really enjoyed that. And I am a child-free person, and all my friends have kids, and even though I love them, it's like, dude, I don't want to talk about your kid 24/7. I don't care to see 50 photos of them doing the same thing. And I just felt like Victor Laval did a really good job of like documenting that phenomenon that happens, right? But in the end, 3 stars, just because it was all over the place. Okay, next up we've got 3.5 star because I was just feeling really indecisive in February. So we've got Devil's Creek by Todd Kiesling. If you've read Scanlines before, that's the same author. I found this because he's on TikTok, and I was scrolling and I came across his TikTok, and he was talking about his book and how it had recently been republished with a new publisher, and it was available on Kindle Unlimited. So I was like, cool, what do I have to lose? This book has to do with a cult. And if you know, last month I was putting together a whole series of videos about cults. So this takes place in Kentucky. I love anything that takes place in Appalachia. I love anything with cults. And there was this cult group with a leader out in the woods outside of town, and they had this church, but then they had this like underground portion under this church, and there was this god that they were worshiping, but they were sacrificing children, and the grandparents of the children bust in one day to try to save the kids, and there was like a mass suicide pact, and the same old that we hear from cults. But then it's fast forward 20 years, and those 6 that survived, they are now adults, and potentially something has come back from the grave to take over the town and to come back for them and exact revenge on what happened. So it's really interesting. It is pretty graphic, vile, I guess you could say offensive in some manner. I didn't take offense at it because he doesn't mean what these characters are saying. Like, you know, the author is not a racist. I assume the author does not have these terrible views. It's very clearly coming across that these characters are bad people because these characters are saying and thinking and doing XYZ. But just be aware if you've got triggers. And he does a fantastic job. At the beginning of the book, the author has like a foreword where he goes over any and all triggers that would be in that book. So if that's something that applies to you, it's there. It was great. I loved the setting. I thought the characters were pretty good. There was some part where I was like, was a little too much zombie stuff for my liking. Not that it was bad, it's just I don't particularly like the zombie like trope. And then I felt like it was a little bit long, so then the pacing was kind of like like all over the place in some parts. But overall, it's a pretty strong book. The more I think about it, I guess it could have been more like a 4-star. I was indecisive last month. So that's Devil's Creek, available on Kindle Unlimited. And then the next book was also a 3-star is Below by Laurel Hightower. I had not read anything by her before. This is a very, very short book. I read it in one sitting. It's about 100 pages, maybe 105 pages. So there is a woman who is traveling through West Virginia, and she's got a lot of stuff, like a lot of baggage that had been going on with her, and she's in her head a lot, and she's really kind of freaking herself out, and it's starting to get dark, and there's going to be a storm, and so she pulls over at a truck stop, and she's really just like freaking herself out. She'd almost gotten into an accident already, and this really nice truck driver is like, hey, I have an extra CB radio, like we could be chatting on the radio if that helps, and like you just follow me, and I can let you know if there's like a curve coming up or whatever. Great. She's like, okay, sounds like a plan. Well, about 5 minutes into the trip, there's a major accident, and that scene was so sad. And then she goes over the edge to try and see if she can help this driver, and crazy things happen. I don't want to say any more if you haven't read it, because it is such a short book. It was a wild ride. There was a lot that happened. If you've seen the cover of the book, right, there is a creature that you were expecting to be in the book. I guess I thought that creature was going to be a lot more and be like the creature, the main feature, but there was like other stuff going on. And now that I think about it, I don't know if that stuff was actually there. Was it in her mind? Was it like her wrestling her demons? I don't know. I just expected that this creature, I don't want to say it if you haven't read it, I just expected that this creature was going to be more upfront and like involved, the main attraction, if you will. And just kind of felt like it was a little bit all over, and now we're looking in the back of the truck at bodies, and now we're just kind of felt like it was all over. Like now she's finding whatever in the truck, and now whoever on the radio, and like it felt a little bit jumbled in parts, but it was a quick, fun read. I liked it. 3.5 stars. Okay, 4 stars. My last 3 books, and I've got them all here. 2 of them were for my reading vlog. So we've got A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen Peck. This is also very short, 100 pages. This has to do with like existential dread, existential horror. It'll make you think about the afterlife. What do you think about the afterlife? How do you know if you're right and others are wrong? What is the afterlife going to look like? What if you actually went to hell? What would that look like? It's got some really funny commentary about all of that I just mentioned, but essentially there's a Mormon man who has died and he's woken up in hell, but it's not the Christian Mormon hell that he was expecting. It is a Zoroastrian religion version of hell, and he is in basically the Library of Babel, and he has to spend all eternity looking for the book of his life story, and if he can find it, he can get out of hell. It's not really a short stay in hell, it's a long stay in hell. So again, I put my full thoughts in my reading vlog. This is, for such a small book, it really makes you think a lot, like really sit down and like chew on it. I'm still, even a month later, every time I think about this book, I think about something new and like, oh, I didn't catch that before. It's just a lot of fun. The character really has a lot of interesting interactions. It has a lot to say about like humanity and like human interactions and how we would react in the face of stress, of grief, of finding out that everything you thought about the world and religion, the afterlife is wrong, and how different people would react to that. And some people might have more mental fortitude than others. It was really interesting for such a short book. Okay, and then these last 2, also 4 stars, and I would say tied for my favorite books of the month, and that would be James Hahn Matson's Reprieve, and then Tananarive The Good House. This is from the library, so it's got like that reflective coating. So Reprieve, also full thoughts are in that reading vlog. This is a social horror that takes place in the 90s, so it's got a lot of really fun 90s horror references, like Hellraiser. And it's following a cast of characters who were either working at or competing in a series of escape rooms, but it's kind of like a haunted house meets escape room. Something goes wrong. We find out from the first page. It takes place in a court. They're in a court case because someone did something, and it's interspersed with transcripts of the court case, and then alternating points of view from the different people involved or who were around at the time of the escape room event. And it's talking about the events that led up to all of them being in the escape room and kind of a little bit the aftermath. It deals a lot with racism, with sexism, with sex tourism, and there's just a lot social horror really going on. So if you're thinking this is a book that's going to have a lot of stuff to do in the escape room, it's flipped. It's probably 25% in the escape room with like some body horror, but 75% is more outside of the escape room and talking about the experiences of what it is like to live in America as a marginalized person and the horror that comes along with that. I thought it was so well done. A lot of really poignant quotes that I like stopped and put my little stickies on. Again, full thoughts are in that video if you want to know more, but I really recommend this to anyone interested in social horror. I had not read much before this, and I think I'm kind of like a new fan to the subgenre. Okay, and my last book, also 4-star. Like I said, Tananarive The Good House. This is a chunker. Is this almost 480 pages? This took me quite a while to get through. I think it took me about a week and a half to read this, and I usually read much quicker than that. But this is in the early 2000s, and there is a family. There is this house, the Good House, that had been passed down through the family. And Angela and her husband and her son, they're hosting a party on July 4th at the beginning of the book, and something tragic happens. You get alternating like timelines, like interspersed with her grandmother who had lived in the house, and her grandma Marie was sort of like a witch doctor, into voodoo, maybe not, maybe just a healer. Like, you know how there's like that questionable line between the two. So this tragic event happens, and then Angela does not want to go back to her grandmother's house. Eventually she is kind of wooed back there to try and like clean it up and see if she wants to sell it or whatnot. She brings a friend with her, and then weird stuff starts happening. So what we find out is that the grandmother had previously banished a demon, but this is all like, you know, this up front. There is this, I don't know if you want to call it a demon, a spirit, a presence, but there is this malevolent force dealing with the house and people who come in contact with the house and the land. And Angela has to try and figure out how to break it and save the people that she loves. And there's just a lot of sadness that happens. Obviously, a lot about racism and generational trauma in this book. It's really interesting to hear the life story of her grandmother Marie and kind of how she came from the East Coast and Louisiana, New Orleans, and made her way up to the Pacific Northwest, and how she was like the only person of color in this entire little town up in Washington State. Very, very interesting book. A lot of sad stuff that happens. There were some people that died that I was like, no, I didn't want them to die. I probably did a really poor job of explaining that book. It's like 20 years old at this point. I'm sure you can find better wrap-ups of this book, but hey, I really enjoyed it. The writing was beautiful. My first Tananarive book I've ever read. I know she has a new book coming out. I think it's called The Reformatory, and so I will probably pick that up just because I love the way that she describes things. It was just very beautiful. All right, so in the end, that was 7 books, average of about 3.5 stars. You can see how it was a decent month, but not necessarily exciting. Honestly, other than The Good House and Reprieve, the rest of them, it's kind of like take it or leave it. They're not really going to be that memorable for me. The other cool thing is though, like in each of these videos every month, I like to try and do a quick recap of my channel growth. So I gained about 100 new subscribers or followers, whatever it's called on YouTube, in the month of February. So thank you guys so much. I'm already on track to exceed that of plus 100 for March. It looks like if it keeps going, I think it'll be about another 150 this month. That's really exciting. My reading is already off to a slow start in the month of March, just with everything happening in my personal life. So please hang in there with me. We have some really fun plans for April. If you haven't seen it already, I had an announcement video. I'll put a little picture here and link it down below. I'm going to be a co-host in April for Old School April. This is a nostalgic themed readathon, watchathon. There's going to be reading sprints and live watch parties. There's a whole Discord going over all of it. This was created by Kelsey at Slime and Slashers, and there are 10 of us co-hosting. So it's a competition, team-based event, and we are basing it on Legends of the Hidden Temple. I am on Team Silver Snakes, so if you want to sign up, go check out my announcement video, and then you can check out the Discord for all of the information. That's everything I have for you today, guys. I hope that my March reading will be better than February, but we will see. We'll see. But I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.